Okay. GM. We're going to bring the heat. This is a spicy VC panel if it wasn't hot enough already outside. I'll be the cool glass of milk between the spicy bites from our panelists. My name is Robbie. We've got a very talented panel here today. You know, I think we can start with a round of quick intros, but also I'd like to hear a little bit about the core investment thesis from each of the funds that we have up here. And so maybe we could start with brief intro as well as a pretty short and sweet mention about what your fund is focused on. Start at the end of the road.
First.
What's that?
Do you want to intro yourself first, though?
Oh, I am Robbie at the Rollup. We also have an investment fund, no outside LPs, and so I will bring a spicy take here and there. And our core investment thesis is really anything with distribution nowadays, anything unique, differentiated. That's the goal.
Okay, great. My name is Casey. I run a fund called Topology, which is a 75 million fund one that's focused on frontier tech. And a large focus of that is crypto AI. Before Topology, originally I was an engineer at Google and then worked at two funds, Bessemer and most recently Paradigm, and then went on my own. And our investment thesis is mainly in this era. So for Fund 2, it will be a little bit different because by that time, engineers will all be automated away. But for right now, engineers are, we think, more powerful than ever before because you still need to be technical to leverage the AI tools. So we really like second-time founders that are technical and then just extremely committed to speed. One other thesis we have is that in this AI era, technology is obviously mostly not a moat. And what is a moat is speed. And so if you're not willing to stay up nights and weekends and just rip, you are going to be outpaced by somebody else. And so speed is the moat, which means hunger is the moat. And so we backed a lot of like cracked people.
I'm Praneeth, one of the founding partners at Ethereal Ventures, which is a firm that was founded by what constituted the former venture investment team at Consensus. And when we look at portfolio construction today, I think it's three buckets primarily. One, where we lead or co-lead rounds with the notion that we're looking at these companies in the same way that we're looking at any Web2 company, has the potential for explosive and at some point, hopefully sustainable cash flows. There's a second bucket, which is basically looking at everything that we don't put in bucket one. But one example is basically looking at themes that that have basically popped up in the public equities markets, and we've seen that it takes about 12 to 18 months for these to make their way into crypto. So we try and find teams who are working on these narratives or these deal wins and look to back them early on. The third is being in a position where we can be opportunistic with the liquid markets as such. And I guess alluding to Casey's point, there's been a change in the founder profile that we're seeing. We're probably seeing a lot more gray-haired people from TradFi actually looking to bring in the distribution angle since I guess we are at a point where crypto infrastructure is good. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Quynh. I lead venture investment for GSR. Before joining crypto full-time 4 years ago, I was an investment banker for almost a decade, also in London. Typically, GSR as a market maker, we don't have external LP. We invested with our own money. We have invested $170 million so far in the past few years in, I'll say, some of the leading company in this space. Sentient is one of the example. We generally there are two types of things that we're looking for. The first one is because where GSR is, we typically see a lot of companies that have the junction between TradFi and crypto. So a big part of our portfolios do comprise of that company. The second part in AI, where we're looking for is where crypto AI can solve the crypto UI UX problem. I think that's a compelling solutions that AI into this space. And the last one I emphasize is where narrative can fade in this space. We truly see that there's strong founders who obsess with building and obsess with distribution typically do really well over cycles. So I look forward to have more discussion around this.
Hi, everybody. I was told to speak very closely to the mic, but that sounds quite loud. Is that okay? So my name's Richard. I'm the co-founder and managing partner at Fabric Ventures. And the kind of bullet points are that we have invested a few $100 million over the last 10, 15 years, increasingly over that time in this space, although kind of the Web3 space is now kind of blurring somewhat with AI, of course. We have a kind of dozen people on the team, and we've invested all around the world and have a great network. And I guess the team at the heart of Fabric has been building companies over the last several generations of the web. My particular background was trying to make an open permissionless network work when the internet and the web was first kicking off, and then very early and not totally successful pieces of the cloud. And as much as I had a kind of front row seat on that, I can remember the time when people scoffed at the idea that the web as an application sort of would kind of work and scale on a global basis, picking up on the previous discussion, excellent discussion between Jake and Ben from Quynh Ho and Jensen, respectively. And people thought, well, that's absurd. You need to kind of engineer it top down, you need to hire the top people from banks, and it all needs to be, very proprietary, and we're going to build it that way. And lo and behold, the web did kind of work, and it also got bidirectional, and now Web3 is working. And I think, our thesis, a little bit building on what Casey said, is that there are a host of very technical problems to be solved to build out the infrastructure and then the applications around that in this next, whatever we want to call it, open web, open economy, across a whole series of different use cases. And so we're looking for people who have got the grit to go and do that. This sounds very boomy to me. Is it just me?
Well, we're booming.
Okay. We're booming. The heat's on and we're booming.
On our show at the Rollup, we've been speaking about the revenue meta. I was also on the way here and speaking to another VC that was sitting next to me on the plane, and he kind of brought up this idea that we are consolidating into a handful of tokens or coins or companies with utility. These are the ones that will shine through. And he made the parallel between utility and revenue. And so I'm curious if the panelists would agree that we're in this phase where revenue is a priority for teams here and now, and we need to prioritize generating revenue here and now versus maybe growth more longer term. How important do you think to early stage companies is revenue here and now?
You hesitate. Well, too much hesitation. I was just going to say something quick, and then maybe other people want to pick up, which is to say that, of course, ultimately it has to be about some kind of revenue. We can't, although the brilliance of tokens for speculation is a feature, not a bug, because we want community engagement and we want to be able to use it to coordinate, people and resources and so forth. But ultimately, we do need fundamentals. And so in a sense, you could say that's the bad news. But the good news is, of course, a lot of great teams are working on this. And I would have said, the good news is that there are a whole host of particularly AI-driven, AI-native applications that are going to need the GPUs, they're going to need the privacy, they're going to need all of these underlying resources, and people are going to pay for the applications. And so before we had a little bit kind of crypto for crypto, and so, that speculation is not exactly paying for much, or, it's all within a closed loop. I think now we're going to get access to way more, value flowing in from the outside. We'll be able to then bring that revenue into the underlying infrastructure. So that's good news.
Yeah, I can add to that. Probably come from GSR perspective where we don't have external funding at all. We found that ability to generate revenue and profit in this space will become essential at some point, and it definitely have to justify the valuations. We can certainly understand that token is a wonderful way that this space created to provide incentive that normally would be very expensive, right? In the traditional space, Uber and others have to bring in huge amount of VC capital, Open AI and others. So in this space, we have found a way to bootstrap ourselves to that level of, able to find a little bit early product market fit. But over time, we believe that for any project or any company to survive long term, we have to talk about revenue, then we have to talk about profit as well. So for us, that is very important. That is the North Star for the next raise and the after raise and a company's survival in the long term.
I think the only point that I would probably have to say is that people have not yet recognized the value or the monetary value of the emergent properties that decentralization brings. Could be censorship resistance, could be quality of service, could be, essentially systems that are very resistant to change, if one might call it good or bad. And we have seen instances in the broader Web2 space where people have actually paid for something similar. I hope that we see something also pan out with essentially the services that are now being rendered by blockchain companies as such, and doing that at scale. I think AI will probably keep realizing at some point that there is a need for verifiability and integrity, and people will see that it is important to pay for something along these lines. And so that's when I fundamentally see a lot of values flowing to crypto primitives as such.
Anything to add? No? Well, we are at Open AGI Summit, and so Open AGI implies the existence of a closed AGI, which we see kind of in the broader equity space with these bigger companies that are running their own models, and they're building out this closed AGI stack. We have this competing AGI stack happening in the decentralized world. And we're starting to see some infighting between some of these open AI projects, open AGI projects, I should say, not open AI. And so this kind of reminds me, at least, maybe you too, of DeFi and CeFi, where DeFi is always infighting, but in reality, we have this outside world of centralized finance that really is the common enemy that we have. And so Praneeth, you kind of mentioned the need for verifiability. I'm curious from all of our panelists, where should we implement the decentralized AI stack? Should it be decentralized from top to bottom, or should we pick and choose which parts of the stack we should implement? Richard, you actually put together 5 pillars of AI in your Fabric investment thesis for 2025. So maybe to you first, should we decentralize all 5 of those pillars, or should we cherry pick which parts of the stack we should decentralize?
We can try and decentralize all 5 or 555 different elements of the stack. But being older than you, I don't think back to DeFi, CeFi. I think back to, the internet and the web and so forth, and in networking standards back in the 90s. And the bottom line is, of course, people want there to be open standards, really in as much as that allows them to grow their business faster. Because it tends to be a case of kind of follow the money. And so there's a sort of double-edged sword there. I think that in our space, in as much as we have a mission and a philosophy we want to adhere to because we think it's better, that's great. In as much as we can build systems that are better because they're cheaper, the right computers are made available at the right time, with the right latency for the data set that delivers private models, woven into a whole, what was it called, menagerie of agents and models that's now going to exist. And so you get better outcomes from the inference. That's good, and I think that is a direction we need to go and prove we can go there. But we also, in order to drive adoption of these open standards, it's not going to be because we sit here when people are on the beach or shout from the mountaintop and say adopt it. It's going to be because it's making people money. And so it's going to be more a case of which, makes people money. And so there is a method for that, and it's better, and hopefully people actually like it because it avoids some form of tyranny. So that's the way I'd look at it.
I'm going to go. Okay, so the question is really like what we need to decentralize and what we don't in the AI stack. I think what's most interesting about, this is a semi-answer to your question, but I think what's really interesting about crypto AI is it's leveraging the infrastructure properties of crypto in a different way than DeFi and CeFi, where the distributed computers are actually just giving us a lot of utility gain. And so like a concrete example is one of our portfolio companies called Inference.net, which we did with Multicoin and then Andreessen did the seed. They just give inference for a lot cheaper than other providers, and they just won a contract against Google, for example, which is a huge feat for like a crypto company to come in and really win against a centralized provider. And we take that as a really strong anecdote for why decentralization or distributed networks have a concrete benefit. And so I'm actually like a kind of like decentralization bear, where I don't think that everything has to be decentralized at all. But I think there are inherent properties where like community owned, like faster financialization, distributed systems, which all help us. So that's like an answer, non-answer.
I'd probably say that like AI as such is probably changing in terms of what works now might not basically work for what might work tomorrow in one way, shape, and sense. And so it's fundamentally going to be hard to associate the notion of verifiability for an architecture that might be very subject to change in, say, like 2 or 3 years from now. But one thing that one could probably recognize is that there still are notions of verifiability that rely on subjective assessments. And what we have in crypto is fundamentally economic security, even though people might call that as a meme. I think there is a notion where we can actually utilize some of these systems around slashing primarily that we've put together and actually build something that could work more broadly to help resolve some of these situations that would be coming up, even though, regardless of, like how the AI stack broadly changes. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the matter.
Yeah, I'm just adding my 2 cents here. There's one area of where community owns could be quite interesting and using incentive is data labeling, for example. So they are expert in company trying to do data labelings, but if you use token as the right incentive with some kind of creative flashing mechanism, you'll be able to collect the data and also verify them much quicker. So that's an area where I found it will be quite interesting to open.
Maybe this is a question for any crypto network here. Casey, I think you put it really well, where basically these crypto systems are able to do something better than their centralized or alternative, save them money, they win the contract. Now, the technology in this case is necessarily open source even. So it's not really the technology that's the moat. What is the moat? Maybe it's the network effects of the network. Maybe you could just better articulate what is the moat of these networks?
I mean, I think it's so idiosyncratic. Like, I think that the technology is to some extent still a moat, because there's a lot of like to be really concrete, because I like to be concrete on panels, like for the inference situation, there's routing algorithms to make the inference as efficient as possible. That's part of the moat. The next mode is the relationships, right? Like, they know people, and everyone's life and everyone's company network is a moat. And then I think there's other things with network effects, where once you get a client on, like, the upselling potential is so massive and the cross-selling is so massive that's another moat. So I don't think I just think, to my earlier comment, I think technology, generally speaking, is becoming less of a moat in like a broad stroke. But I think these companies are so nuanced.
And yeah, go.
I mean, I agree. I mean, open systems, you can fork it. People have been discussing for a long time. Does that mean that there's no value in it? But obviously, there are many network effects around the community of developers, of users, of partners, and so forth. And I think that will continue to be the case. I was thinking about a kind of a subset of that a little bit, and it might overlap with some of the discussions we've had with Casey between Fabric and Topology, but is this question of how do you... It could be that in this next phase that the AI sort of first web, that suddenly privacy and control over your own data will become more primary than it has been before. Whereas we were hearing again from Ben, from Jensen earlier, how people, generally speaking, have not valued that so much. You can, it's kind of almost a virtue signal. We can preserve your privacy, but actually it's not really private, and we'll do whatever. But actually, if we're going to really get the full value that is possible out of these models, we're going to be giving up every eye flicker, every heartbeat. All of these things are going to be shared. And at that point, I kind of personally believe you'll cross a Rubicon where privacy becomes critical to everybody, and not just that you'll want to take that data with you there's a lot of data somehow, and you want to be able to benefit from that regardless of which system within which you're operating. So it's more human-centric and more interoperable than we've ever had before, and I think that creates opportunities for building value and moats.
Yes, the fundamental issue we've had with open source is the tragedy of the commons. You've had people actually build some cool stuff, but you've had a lot of the public clouds just snap that up and offer that as part of their own service offerings in one way, shape, and sense, and not really leaving people the ability to actually gain value from something useful that they put together. With crypto, I guess you now have provenance in one way, shape, and sense to show that you contributed value in one way, shape, and sense. And we now also have broader distributed networks that we have actually been running for the better part of a decade. And so people can actually choose to dedicate some part of their compute or their storage or networking and help host this and broadly use that as a mechanism to fight against the entrenched cloud organizations. And that in and of itself gives a really nice mechanism for people to actually create software that is aligned from an economic standpoint.
I think we all have a common goal here to defeat those closed source monopolies in the AI world. What do you think is the risk of that cabal winning? Is there anything that they could do to prevent the Open AGI world and stack from proliferating?
I can start. Regulation is probably the biggest one, right? I think if we look at different areas of the world, probably government like UAE or somewhere in the East, even though they have probably more authoritarian kind of government, they do have an incentive to want to leapfrog certain development happening in the US. So I would probably expect that there's a very head-to-head competition race between countries like US, Europe have been notorious in terms of privacy, open source, and another, versus kind of East and Middle East country. So I would say probably the biggest hurdle for me in terms of open AI is definitely the regulation part. The other one is obviously the capital, right? The infinite amount of capital that the decentralized network have. How many times now we've seen on the news where, okay, OpenAI just have a better model than, Claude, and then, China have a better model. So I think this infinite loop of having better model, creating from better access to human talent, and then also access to capital, and also because of the existing reputation, they're also able to get through enterprise contract faster. Now there are cases where we'll be able to catch up with that. So I would say those are probably is the risk and the challenge. Can we overcome them? Yes, I think with them, but yeah, that would be my point.
I think the biggest challenge we face is user apathy in one way, shape, and sense, and societal apathy. I think people are waking up to the dangers of running closed source systems and essentially closed source AI systems, but I don't think it's something that has prevented people from just using really good products, which is what they are today. But as and when we actually start getting to the point where people need to understand the provenance of these systems, that's when I think things will probably make a change. And I guess I do not want to fight institutions, but I do want some of these entrenched institutions to also realize that these properties that we are offering as like a community that is anchored on decentralization are actually useful for the broader customers that they're selling these products to. And I want them to incorporate some of these elements into their own offerings and, have them on board. I honestly just want to make sure that people really care about the products that they're using.
I just say I think the direction we need to go is to try and make it less of a battle. If it's as long as it's kind of cast as kind of us versus them, I think we're possibly thinking about it the wrong way. We need to build, cheaper inference. We need to build better privacy management. That's what we need to do, and then it'll effectively get adopted across the board as a better mousetrap, and then we can just drop the G in the title to this summit, and then we're there.
Yeah, ultimately that is the case. Build better technology and more efficiently, offer it at a better price. It will get adopted. We have 2 minutes left or so just a couple of...
Can I say one thing on that?
Sure.
I don't know exactly how, Open AGI is gonna pan out, but I will say it's just like actually mind-boggling where we are in AI, where first with the web, there was no AI obviously, and we had maximum control. Then we started getting recommendational algorithms, which is actually the real like AI first use case, where Amazon started recommending you things, Spotify started telling you what to listen to. And now we're all talking to these LLMs, which literally shape the way we're thinking. And it is like the biggest mind virus that we've ever had in the world. And it actually just like keeps me up at night to think about how it is like the Trojan horse to shaping where our society is going. And the fact that we don't have controls over it is crazy. And we all have it. We're all using this. And it is like the gentlest yet most potent way, I think, to shift a society's understanding of the zeitgeist. And so I don't know, like, I don't want to be a doomsday girl. Like, I'm an optimist, but I do, like, it doesn't cease to amaze me, the reach and the impact that this technology has, and probably previously had with recommendation, but now even more so with LLMs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a knife's edge, I would say. I think Elon put it, it's on a knife's edge, but I mean, Elon put it, and it doesn't have to be obviously Terminator, but something pretty dystopian and bad for our emotions and all the rest of it. But Elon put it at 20%, I think, and then tried to spin it that round as like, well, that's 80% chance that we're okay. But yeah.
Yes, thank you, OpenAI, for making us aware. That's all I probably have to say. So.
Yeah, the way I look at this, and I agree with you, Casey, because I probably use ChatGPT and others more than I talk to some of my colleagues sometimes. It's become my best assistant. And the way I see this is more like we are in the stream right now, a very strong stream. If we don't move, then there's no way to go backward now, right? So you just go with it. And then it will be incredible when it starts moving into hardware. So we gotta embrace it. I have Echo Amazon in my house, and it's kind of very stupid right now. I think it's on purpose, but the moment Amazon adopting AI into Echo, and all the conversation I have, I'm generally thinking, what else is going to recommend to me now? What kind of conversation? Probably will listen to everything happening to my house, and be more like a real human. So yeah, I'm embracing it, but also a little bit scared.
If we've got one more minute, final. Definitely it's sort of a distortion, a possible corruption of the human existence. But I think there's another sort of more mundane thing that has hit product market fit, which is this sort of combination of stable coins and AI agents and the possibilities around commerce. Because I think, where it feels to me that leads quite rapidly is this sort of radical marketization of everything. Where humans are taken out of the loop of how sort of macroeconomics kind of operates, and decisions about treasury and capital allocation and supply chains and all of this, that could happen quite fast. Presumably that's where it should happen faster, where the humans were just friction in sort of more perfect supply chains and commodities markets and capital markets and so forth. So it'll happen, and then something is making the decisions about how to optimize that, which is going to be the reserve currency, where should we be building stuff and so forth. So I think that's a similar but different direction, or in a possibly dangerous or unstable direction that things could go.
Is that an AI overlord, like a super surveillance state of sorts? That's pretty dangerous.
I don't know where we're going to end this, but we haven't talked about the application that is building on the AI, stack that we have right now. And one of the cool things that I was thinking about, I'm obsessed with travel, and one of our portfolio company who just doing travel booking is telling me that they are building AI layer so that the agents can actually go in and book your travel now, and it's happening real, and they are going to have like a rail for them to actually book it. I know this is going to happen, but it actually happened much sooner. Probably like in a week time, they'll have the product ready, and I can't wait to use it to see whether AI going to recommend better and execute the transaction better than I would be able to do myself or my travel agent do.
Well, definitely we've seen now the move. I think Andre Kapati was talking about like restructuring what we think of as the APIs to, the web out there to make it more ready for training and then sort of digestion by agents. And so I think, like I've noticed, I don't know if you, when you're looking at booking something or sort of consulting on a trip with ChatGPT, you'll get some recommendations from sites that are kind of look technically better to the machine, but as a human you'd probably never have looked at it because it was really ugly and like it was really broken in different ways. So I think it's going to change things quite rapidly. But in terms of use cases, one of my favorite sort of epiphanies I had recently was that I often get asked at bedtime to tell a story from my childhood, particularly by my 10-year-old. And which actually, by the time it's the end of the day, is quite taxing. To like, another story from scratch that I have to tell. And so one evening, I thought I'd sort of try doing ChatGPT and using memories and so forth. And it occurred to me, of course, it's not going to be that far in the future when we give up full access to all of our photos and all of our travel journeys ever. And they have a whole bunch of context for those, maybe all your notes or whatever, and they can make up a pretty damn good, not just like a sort of narrative story that it reads to your child, but like a little video or something. I don't know, the whole thing. And so there's an application, I think, going forward, but also a privacy implication.
It's quite staggering, the horizon of awareness. Ultimately, these things are going to know us better than we know ourselves. Guys, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for all the spicy takes and all the stories. Thank you.